my name's Greg. I'm the managing director of Soi Dog Foundation. And yep, we're here in Thailand talking about SoiDog's projects and how we need help. And a big thing we work on is the dog meat trade. There not many people in Thailand eat dog, but in Vietnam it's really common. It's just out in the open that people eat dog. And almost all the stray dogs in northern Vietnam have been scooped up already and sold to meat markets, so there aren't many. But in Thailand, a lot of people are really compassionate to dogs, and there are a lot of community dogs here. So there's been a really horrific trade, people taking stray dogs and even stealing people's pet dogs, and they stuff them into trucks. They send them across the border to Laos and across Laos and into Vietnam. The dogs go for days without food or water. A lot of them have broken bones from being crushed together into these cages, and then they're usually killed in horrific ways and sold for meat. And a couple of years ago, tens of thousands of dogs every year were trafficked this way. And it is illegal, but there was almost no enforcement of the laws. You know, that the dog smugglers would bribe the law authorities at every step of the process. But I'm really happy to say that now this international trade from Thailand to Vietnam has virtually stopped. And that's largely as a result of SoiDog's efforts. We've been working closely with many levels of government, from local law enforcement up to high levels of the livestock department and other central government. And we've been launching a big awareness campaign and working closely with the law enforcement at the borders to persuade them to actually do their jobs and stop people from smuggling dogs across the borders. And this has happened so much that's become really unprofitable for the dog smugglers, and it's basically stopped. Of course, there are people who have been making their living off dog trafficking for generations, so they're not going to just give up. So they've turned to other things. Like, we're finding some information now that dogs are being smuggled into China, and we're also finding more and more evidence of a dog skin trade, where dogs are being killed in Thailand and their skin is processed into leather, and no one really knows where that goes, but it's probably sent to somewhere, then somewhere else, then somewhere else, right. And it could end up as golf gloves or in musical instruments. Yeah, it could be sold in the States easily. We don't know about that. So there's still a long way to go, even though we're making really exciting progress. And one of the offshoots of our campaign against the dog meat trade is that whenever possible, we encourage the law authorities to seize trucks that are smuggling dogs, and then we have these dogs that have been rescued, and what do we do with them? So that's been a big challenge for us. Thailand doesn't have any government agency that's in charge of dogs and cats. There's the National Park Department takes care of wildlife. They have a livestock department, but nobody in the government really cares about dogs or cats. So the central government put the responsibility for this onto the livestock department. And livestock said, well, they have livestock centers in rural places around Thailand where mainly for dealing with outbreaks of diseases that affect cattle and chickens and taking care of sick livestock. So they agreed to give space in these centers for dogs rescued from the dog meat trade and to have their staff take care of these animals. But they said they don't have any budget for dog food or extensive medical care for dogs. Right. So that is, or even for building proper dog shelters. So that responsibility has fallen on SoiDog. So we've been working really hard to fundraise, and we've built proper dog shelters up in Buriram. Well, and these dogs used to be in different livestock centers scattered around the country. So we built proper dog shelters in Buriram, and they're not ideal, but we're taking care of 1,500 dogs there. And so it's a huge burden, and just creating acceptable conditions has been a lot of work.
Challenge.
Yeah, absolutely a challenge. So we've moved all the dogs to Buriram, where it's a lot easier for us to monitor the care that they're getting, and we still are providing tons of dog food for these dogs. You think of the cost of feeding 1,500 dogs.
Yes.
Yeah, plus getting them spayed and neutered after they're rescued, and any ongoing care that they need. So yes, that's been a huge project, and obviously we don't want these dogs to be stuck in these shelters forever. I mean, we have a shelter here that has 400 dogs and cats in it, and a couple dozen staff, and we work really hard to take good care of these animals. Up in Buriram, it's run by the government, and the quality of care is not ideal.
Right.
It's not what I would want my own pet dog to be in.
Right.
So we really need these animals to be adopted because we don't want them to spend the rest of their days up in these big government shelters. So we're making a big push as much as possible to find people who will give a home to a dog rescued from the meat trade.
So obviously the motivation for people to participate in the dog meat trade is financial. On average, how much would a smuggler make smuggling dog, handling dog meat, as opposed to working as a construction worker?
Oh, that's a really good question. I couldn't give you exact numbers. I'll say the dog meat trade in Thailand, it's very much a mafia-style operation. There is a small number of kingpins who make tremendous amounts of money being in charge of this whole international smuggling operation. On the other extreme, a lot of people do it just as a little extra money. People will have a day job where they're doing whatever they do 9 to 5, and then in the middle of the night they might go out in a pickup truck and steal dogs out of people's neighborhoods and stuff them in trucks. So that side of it isn't very profitable. I mean, we've heard stories about people will buy a new truck. They don't feel good about doing it, but I've heard stories of people that would, sorry, dogs are loud. People would buy a new truck and then steal dogs until they can pay off their truck, and then they stop.
Right.
So there's a huge range of how much money people make from it. I mean, the dog meat itself, it's more expensive than chicken or pork. So it's not something that people eat because they're too poor to afford other kinds of food. Yeah, it is. Sort of, something in some countries, businessmen who want to impress their colleagues might take people out to have some beer and some dog meat. So it's not something that, by cutting off the dog meat trade, we're not affecting people who can't afford to cook their own food.
Right.
It's not a very long-standing tradition, but it's a pretty recent tradition that we're trying to stamp out.